Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting caroling cardinals, and I'm sipping on some hot cocoa. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, fire red, burnt umber, which I will call brown, deep yellow, green oxide, and Mars black. Of course, you can switch up those colors if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, a number 12 round synthetic brush, and a number 1 round synthetic brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. Of course, you can switch those up if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I do have a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same type of paint and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link that you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting our sky and our ground. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are brown, black, and white. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do my sky first, and then I'll do my land. So my sky, I want it to be kind of a nice neutral background for a snowy winter day. So I'm going to go for a tan type of color. I'll have it darker at the top and lighter at the bottom. I'm going to come about 2/3 of the way down my canvas, and then we'll put on our snowy ground in a minute. So I've pre-mixed myself a little bit of a tan color so you can see kind of where I'd like to start the top of that sky. So you can take your brown and add some white to it. You don't have to use all of your brown, but you can certainly use as much of it as you'd like to, because we're not going to be, we might use a little bit of it later elsewhere, but you can use a lot of it. And then once you've got the color that you desire, this is looking pretty good, I'm going to be using yeah, that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to not wash my brush or anything. I'm just going to start up at the top of my canvas using a left to right type of brush stroke. You can use it, you can go crisscross if you want to, or just fully straight across, whatever works for you. And then I'm going to pick that same tan color up again. I'm going to come about halfway down my sky with this mixture that I made. And then once I get about halfway down my sky, I'll start introducing white to it so it gets a little bit lighter as it comes down towards that horizon line. So again, just my tan color. You might find that some areas are a little bit lighter or darker than others, just because if you didn't mix your paint 100%, that will happen. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my tan plus white on my brush. So I have a mixture of tan plus white. So what'll happen is it's going to get a little bit lighter on this pass that I'm doing. So tan plus white, and I get it to blend in with the previous section. So you can go back up that previous section a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up white with my dirty brush, and what'll happen is the remaining tan will work its way off of my brush, and I will end up with a nice light color down at the bottom of my sky. I don't need it to go all the way white because I want to be able to kind of see the difference from my land once I put my land on. So if yours is all the way white, maybe just introduce a little bit more tan to it so that way it doesn't go too white on you. And then I'm bringing it down about 2/3 of the way down my canvas. So in order to figure out where that is, you can kind of eyeball where your halfway point is. Halfway between there and the bottom of your canvas is here, and then a third of the way somewhere in between there. So it can be, yours doesn't have to be exactly as mine. Yours can be higher or lower. Maybe one side you drop it down a little bit further than the other side. So it's a landscape with a wintry sky, so it doesn't have to be anything perfect. And then what I'm going to do for my ground, once I've got this all nice and colored in, is I am going to be painting my ground with a grayish type of color. So I'm not even going to wash my brush. What I'm going to do is I'm going for a gray that's about this tone in through here. So really all you need to do is just add a little bit of white into your black, and then just get yourself a medium type of gray color. And I'm just going to add a little bit more white in through here. That's looking pretty good for me to start. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the bottom of my ground with this gray color, and then as I work my way towards the top of the land, I'm going to make it whiter or lighter. So that's how I started the bottom. Now what I'm going to do with my dirty brush is pick up some white paint, and it's going to get lighter and lighter as it goes towards the top. So this is the ground, so it can have a little bit more lumps and bumps in it than the sky did. The sky, I've got mine looking like it might have some clouds floating by, but the ground would look like it's got snow piles. So you can use kind of curved motions, you can use X's, you can use dots, whatever kind of works for you to get these kind of a translation of bumps or snowy bumps or hills on it is totally fine. And I'm bringing it all the way up to my sky. And then once I get to my sky, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my white kind of thicker at the tippy. Oops, I had a little bit of the gray on there, but that's okay. Get that white to go a little bit thicker at the tippy top, so that way you can see it on top of the sky. I know that I'm going to have a big tree in this area, so I don't really care what happens in through here because I'm going to have that big tree. But over on the edges, if you can get those edges to be a little bit lighter or show that there's that extra bit of white snow on top as it's meeting the sky, that'll give you a good illusion as to the land meeting the sky. And then you can fiddle with this all you want. If you want to do a second layer, feel free to do so. And we will be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our Christmas tree. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm going to be using are black and green. So we're just putting the tree in place right now. We'll put all the decorations and snow on later. I do want to forewarn you though that before you start this step that you want to make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dried out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself, in essence, kind of the outline of my tree, and then I'm just going to color in the center. I'm going to be using green and black, and I'm going to be alternating those colors on my brush. So I start with both of the colors on my brush, but then I will, the next time I pick up paint, I'll pick up just black and then just green and just alternate. So I'm going to go black and green on my brush at the same time. I'm going to make myself a couple of markers, excuse me, so I know where I want to go. So I'm going to have my tree a little bit to the right of the center. So if you find the top center of your canvas, go over maybe about 2 inches or so, and then maybe just down about 1 inch. That'll be the tippy top. Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat. Then I'm going to come straight down from that, maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches in my land. And then I'm going to go almost halfway between that and the edge of my canvas, maybe a little bit more, somewhere in in there. And then I'll go about that same distance to the left of my center, so somewhere in through there. So that's going to give me my typical triangular type shape, and then I'm going to do my edges first, and then we'll color in the middle. So I want it to remain pretty pointy at the top, so what I do is I just kind of dot out like this. You want to kind of give uneven type of branches, so maybe one goes out a little bit further, maybe they come down at different angles, so maybe you've got one kind of leaning down, maybe you have one kind of going up. The more kind of organic these edges look, the more natural the tree will look. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just going to kind of come down with my side of my brush, giving myself these uneven kind of edges to my tree, keeping in mind that that's my end goal, this little edge down at the bottom and through here. And then once I've got that whole exterior there, I'm going to do the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, just bringing down some really uneven type of marks that'll look like the front edge of the tree. And then once I've got that, I just color in the center with dots. So I'm picking up green paint right now, and then the next time I'll pick up some black paint. And what'll end up happening is, because I'm utilizing both of these colors in kind of a alternating type of fashion, I'm going to get some light spots and some dark spots within that tree, so it'll look really nice and natural. And you'll just bring it right to the edge, and you don't even have to color it 100%, because you're going to have 1,000 little lights, and you're going to have some snow and all kinds of fun stuff on top of it. So just do the best you can, get a good amount on there, and then once you've got it done, we are going to be excuse me, utilizing our small brush for the next step. So you can put this large brush away, and you can make your tree as big or as small as you want. If you want to make anything bigger, just pull it out. So you'll put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our books. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black and white. And I'm going to go for 5 carolers, but you could certainly have as many as you want. You can have your books as large or as small as you want, whatever tickles your fancy. So I'm going to have, I'll have one back here, and then I'm going to have 4 along this front area here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load my small brush with some black paint. I'm going to start over on the right hand side and work my way to the left. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 vertical lines. And again, they could be of any size. And then I'm going to do 2 V's that are going to connect them. So I'll do a V like this. And your V's don't even have to be in the center. They can be off center. That'll just make it look like the bird is holding the book at an angle. So it's totally up to you, however you want to, however big or small you want your books to be. They could be much smaller than mine, or maybe you want a different colored one too. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. We're going to be painting the birds behind these little books, so this is going to be just a nice accent, I guess, of sorts. So I do that, and then I'm going to do my V's. And this one maybe is going to be a little bit more narrow, but wider. So you could certainly have them, again, at different angles. Just paint, once you've got the exterior shape, you just paint in the entire binder or the cover of the book with black paint. And, you know, maybe you've got a special caroling book that's brown or whatever the case may be. I'm going to make them larger over in the front and over here to make them look like they're closer, like the birds are closer. So these ones are going to be a little bit bigger. So I do my 2 vertical lines, and then I connect them with a V, something like this. And then I'm just going to paint it in. So because this is an illustrative type of cartoon style painting, you don't really have to worry about your lines being perfect or anything along that line, but if you're one of those painters that really desires nice clean edges and things of that nature, what you can do as you're drawing these edges to the books is you could use a little bit of water on your brush, and that's going to allow you to get some nice clean edges to them. I'm going to have another one somewhere in this vicinity. So again, just doing my vertical lines and then connecting them with a V on the top and on the bottom, and then just coloring in the entire interior with it. So you could also, like I said, plan your carolers out in a different way. Maybe you want them all in a row where they're standing right next to each other. You can have them circling the tree like I have them. So feel free to make it into whatever way you want. And then I think I'm going to have maybe one more somewhere back here. This one will be a little bit smaller. So something like this. And then I'll just color this one in. And then we got to put a little bit of a highlight on the book. So once I've got them all colored in with black paint, what I'm going to do is I will utilize a little bit of white on my brush and put a highlight on the side of the book that I feel is kind of facing the Christmas tree, because that's our light source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and then I'm going to put some white paint on my brush, and I'm going to start back at the original book. So I feel like the left-hand side is facing the tree a little bit more. So I go down the center of the book like this, and if you run into wet paint, that's great. It's going to make it look much more natural. So you can put the white paint in there, and then I just kind of rub it out to that left-hand side. It doesn't have to be a perfect blend or anything like that. You can just kind of get it to this side that's facing the tree to be a little bit lighter. That'll give the illusion that we've got a light source of sorts. This one here is kind of in front of the tree, so I do want it to have a little bit of a highlight, so I'll still kind of put one there, and maybe at the tippy top of the book, something like this, maybe a little bit on this left hand side. So it doesn't have to be a perfect blend or anything like that. We're just going for a nice illustrated type of painting. So this one I'm going to have on the right hand side, because the right hand side to me is closer to the light source. So again, if you run into wet paint, wet black paint, just blend it right in. That'll add to the illusion of it. Maybe we'll put a little highlight at the top and through there. And then I'm just cruising right along to the next one that I did in order. So that way, that paint will have a little bit of time to dry in between. But if the wet paint is not working for you, you can certainly just give it a minute, let it dry, and then put this highlight on top of it. So wherever your comfort zone is totally fine. And then once you've got the books done, we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be doing the base coat for our birds and their legs. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are red and brown. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to do the bird itself first, and then we'll add some legs on after that. So when I teach how to do birds, I typically teach that you can start all birds with two shapes. Egg for the body and a circle for a head. So we're going to use that thought process as we're building these birds, and you can put them in any direction that you would like. So we're going to start over to the right. I'll move my way to the left. I'm using my small brush and I'm using red paint. So on this particular bird, I want him kind of facing the tree, or the body's kind of facing the tree. So I'm going to put my egg, which is going to be the main part of the body, is going to kind of go, if I was to travel in front of it, in front of the book, it would go something like this. And then I'm going to have the other part. So this will be my egg. And then I'm going to put a little tail on it. So my tail for this one is going to kind of come out in this direction. So these type of birds, they have little tails that are a little bit more narrow as they are meeting the body, and then they get a little bit wider the further away that they go. So this one I've got kind of on looking or sideways a little bit. And if you bump into your book a little bit, don't worry about that, because you'll be able to make any little modifications. The circle part is going to be the head. So I'm going to have this particular bird with his head kind of back as if he's singing up into the air. So that's going to be the circle part of my head. And then I'm just going to kind of color this part in like this, and I want this to kind of meet in through there. So this particular bird, I'm going to have the crown of its head leaning back, because I've got its head kind of leaning back. So I'm going to just pull that little red crown like this, and then I want his beak to be way up in the air. So I'm going to put this beak kind of up like this. He's really just singing to the stars, singing to the beautiful Christmas tree, something like that. And then I'm going to put a little hands, wing hands that are holding the book. So I've got just red paint on my brush. I'm overlapping it into the book a little bit, and I know that my red paint is translucent or see-through, so I'll be able to see a little bit of my book through it, which is okay, because we'll be adding more details on later. And we'll add feet in a minute too. And if you can see through any of that red, don't worry about it. I'm going to move to the next one. This one I'm going to have my egg, this one's kind of, the body is towards the viewer, so we're going to see, we're not going to see its tail, we're just going to see kind of the front part of its body. So I'm going to have its front part kind of in through here, going to have the book kind of over the edge on the right side, and the pointy part of the egg would be behind it. So we won't see that part. So I'm just kind of making myself a little bit of an oval for this particular body, bringing it right up to that book. I'm going to color in this section in through here. And this head on this particular bird is going to be kind of looking off to the right direction, to the right side of the canvas. So I'm going to do my circle, which is going to be somewhere in this vicinity. And again, it's okay if your birds from one bird to the next are different proportions and different styles, because again, we're just painting a nice cartoon character of sorts. I'm going to close off this little gap in through here just so it's not too bobbly of a head. I'm going to have him singing maybe over to that guy over there. So his beak is going to be kind of coming out in this direction. Maybe he's got his mouth wide open. He's singing a great Christmas carol. And then I'm going to put the crown on this one. Is going to come kind of up in this direction in through here. So you can have it as big as you want or as little as you want. And again, because the red is translucent, you'll probably see some of your background behind it, and don't worry about that right now. We'll take care of that as the painting progresses. And then he needs some couple little hands. So I'm going to put one in this direction over here, a little wing hand, and then a couple of little fingers coming over, or wing pieces coming over in that direction. So no tail on that one. This one in through here, we're just going to see the top part of his egg shape for his body. So we're going to go something like this. And then his tail is going to be behind him. So I'm going to put his little tail on when I do this. And as I'm constructing these, again, my whole thought process was that the body is an egg. Where's the tail? On this one, it's going to be on the other side of the body, and I'm going to have it kind of popping out a little bit, like he's, you know, really at an angle that we can see his tail, something like that. I'm not going to see any bottom part of the red underneath the book. And then I'm going to put my circle for my head. So this circle is going to be pretty darn big because this one's pretty close to us. So I've made this one the largest of them all. So we've got him something like this. And I'm doing something a little bit different with this guy. He's going to be looking straight at the viewer, or towards the viewer, so I'm not going to see his beak popping out the sides, and I'll show you how to execute that in a little bit. But we need his crown up on the top of his head, so I'm going to put the crown somewhere in this direction up in through here, so almost like just a point on the top of his head. I'm going to go ahead and do this guy over here. He's going to be leaning back as he's singing towards the tree. So I'm going to put the egg part of his body somewhere in through here. He's going to be leaning back, but I'm going to put the egg part somewhere in through here. And we're not going to see a lot of the bottom part of the egg. So we've got this going on in through here. We're going to see his tail is going to be coming out to the left, maybe at a different angle than that guy in through there. Oh, I forgot to put hands on this one. I'll have to come back to that in a second. So we've got his egg right there. I'm going to put a little bit of a tail coming out in this direction. So again, your tails can be as exciting or as simple as you'd like. Then his head is going to be leaning back. So we're going to have his circle part of his head coming somewhere in this direction. So I've got it leaning back farther than his back. So this way he's really going to look like he's in motion and he's got a lot of song to sing. And then maybe I'll put a little bit of his beak coming up in this direction like this. Yeah, this is cute. And then he's going to have the crown of his head going in this direction like that. I can't forget the hands. So we're going to put some little hands going in here. And then we'll do another one coming over in through here. And then I'm going to go back to this guy here because he definitely needs some wing hands holding on to his book in through here. And you can see I'm not doing anything other than just pulling in some red into the book so it looks like we've got the edges of the feathers. And then I need this little guy back over here. So he's going to kind of be leaning into the song. So he's going to have his the egg portion of his body is going to be something like this. Ooh, maybe he's going to cross over back here with the little point of his egg like that. And then we'll have this portion in through here, and then I'll just kind of color it in with my red paint. And again, don't worry if the red is streaky at this point, or if you bumped into your black or anything like that, that's quite all right. Those are easy corrections to be made. And then I'm going to put his tail maybe coming down in this direction like that. He's going to have some feet in a minute. I'm going to have his head kind of a little bit more leaning towards the right. So we're going to put the circle part on in through here. And then he's going to have his little beak coming out in this direction. And again, you can have yours as expressive as you want, or as, you know, pretty as you want. Maybe you want yours to be a little bit more realistic than mine, because I know that there's, you know, cardinals are a songbird. So maybe you really want yours to look like they've got, you know, they're in a nest or something, and maybe they're not really holding caroling books. Maybe they're, you know, just singing to one another in a beautiful nest. So you can make them whatever way that you want. So then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I need to put some, oh, he needs hands too. I keep forgetting my little feather hands in through here. So he's got one there, and then maybe one over in this direction here. And then I need little legs. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to load it with brown paint. So I've got brown paint on my brush, and I'm just going to put two little legs on each of them in the direction that I feel that they would be standing. So I've got this one kind of coming out like this. And then for the feet, I just kind of make them kind of flat foot with maybe 2 or 3 toes in the front portion, and then maybe 1 toe coming out the back. And I just kind of do a nice little sketcherly type of style for the feet. This one's going to have some fun legs that are maybe spread open a little bit, making sure he's in a good stance where he's not going to fall over as he's singing his beautiful Christmas carol. And of course, you can make yours, maybe you want yours out of proportion, and maybe you want yours a lot longer or whatever. I think this one's going to have them maybe coming straight down somewhere in through here, and you can have them as short or as long as you want. Maybe your birds have really long legs, maybe they have short legs. You could pick a different kind of bird that, you know, maybe you want to represent. Maybe yours turn into penguins of sorts or something like that. I'm going to go ahead. This one's going to have a cute leg over on this side, and then maybe one is way out in this direction. Maybe he's really kind of into it, and he's almost dancing as he's singing. Who knows? Hopefully he's not going to fall over, though. We can always extend stuff if we need to make it so he doesn't look like he's falling over. And then this little guy up here, I want him to kind of look like he's leaning in. So I'm going to have his legs kind of in a diagonal type of way as well, something like this. And then we've got some little cute toes coming off the edges. I think my brush is a little overloaded, so I just wiped it off so I can get a little bit skinnier of a, there we go, that works. And then we're going to be utilizing our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your cute birds in place, you can put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to put some decorative lights on our tree. I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors I'm using are red, yellow, and white, but you could certainly use any colors that you want for your decorations on your tree. So I'm going to start with a red paint, and really what I'm doing is just making a whole bunch of polka dots. So you can have yours as large or as small as you want. The thicker your paint is, the more you'll be able to see, or the more vibrant that color will be. If you have a translucent type of paint like I do, what will happen is the paint will tend to get a little bit darker as it dries because you're working on that dark base. So how I'm going to rectify that is I'm going to put the red on first, and then I'm going to do another pass with a little bit of red and white on my brush. So that way I can get some of these lights to be a little bit brighter. And then another trick is to have the lights kind of sparkle outside of the footprint of the tree. So you can put a couple of lights on the exterior part, even if it's not touching the tree, and that's going to make it look like it's kind of sparkling, maybe from the other side of the tree. So now I'm going to put red and white on my brush at the same time, and I'll hit a few of these with red and white on my brush, and it'll give them that extra bit of sparkle to them. So you don't necessarily have to do them all, and I don't necessarily want them to all go white per se, but that little bit of white on my brush will help to illuminate some of these and make them almost sparkle a little bit brighter than others. So it just gives you that extra bit of diversity in the brightness of the colors. And you can keep fiddling with that. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up yellow and white. So my yellow is even more translucent than my red is. So what I'm going to do, I'm not just going to start with yellow. I'm actually going to put a little bit of white into my yellow. So that way the opacity of my yellow is better and higher, and you won't be able to, it won't be as see-through as it would naturally be. And then I'm just going to kind of make myself a whole bunch of dots. You can make rows as if you're doing like a row of garland of sorts on your tree if you wanted to. That's going to be totally up to you how you want to decorate it. But I'm just doing little sparkly lights all over the tree. You can choose to do yours however that you would like. And once I've got a whole bunch of yellow ones on, I'll do the same thing. I'll come back with another pass with a tiny bit of white on my brush and put a little bit of white on top of some of these yellow ones, just so it gives them that extra little bit of sparkle. You could also put a star on the top of your tree if you wanted to. So that's going to be totally up to you if you want to make any of those other kind of design elements into whatever makes you happy. And now I'm just putting a little bit of yellow plus white on my brush, and this is going to get some of these to sparkle just a little bit more, so that way they end up you know, just sparkling more. That's what lights on Christmas trees do. But I'm trying not to get them to look like snow, because I know I'm going to have some snow on here in a little bit, so I definitely want them to maintain their color. So this will work for me. And then we're going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your lights on, you can put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the faces on our birds. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm using are yellow, white, and black. If I need to go into any red, I will, and I'll let you know. So I want these to be really expressive and fun faces, but I still want them to have the cardinal type of typical markings to them. So I'll kind of guide you into how to do the mask colors or shapes on the faces, but we're going to start with the beaks and putting the beaks in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use yellow and white, and you can just use whatever yellow and white mixture that you had for your trees. So I've got yellow and white, and I'm going to put my beaks in place. They're already there in red, but the yellow and the white is going to help to make them stand out and make them look a little bit more natural as far as cartoon natural cardinals go. And you can certainly have yours any shade of yellow to red. Cardinal beaks can come in many different varieties. So all I'm really going to do is take my yellow mixture and kind of re-identify that beak and bring it into the face a little bit. If you've got a side profile. So we've got this one over here, and you can have some of that red still showing. So you don't have to paint in the whole thing. Having a little bit of that red on the edges might even give it a little bit more dimension anyways. I'm going to save this one for last because this one's going to be the most difficult. So we're going to just kind of tackle all the other four before we get to that one. So just a little bit of that yellow and white. And I'm not using a lot of paint on my brush, but I am making sure that I have kind of a good coverage. So something like that. And again, you can have a little bit of that red showing through as well. So this one is going to be kind of looking right at us, or to the side a little bit. So I'm going to have his beak is going to be coming like this, like we're going to see the front of it. So it's almost like in a triangle. I've got it a little bit off to the side, and then I'm just going to kind of paint it in like this. This is the top part of the beak. And then the bottom part of the beak, I'm going to bring down in this long, like sideways triangle type of shape. So we're just giving him the opening of the mouth from the side, or of the beak from, like, it's a little bit to the side, but we're looking at it more head on than we are the other ones. And then if you need to, you can go back and do any other adjusting. What I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm going to put a little bit of black inside some of these beaks. So a tiny bit of black on my brush is going to give me the illusion of the inside of the mouth. If you want to, you can do that. If not, no worries. The biggest one that it's going to matter for is this guy right in through here. So I'm putting a little bit of black in that upper part of the inside of the mouth, and then just kind of rubbing it down as it's going towards, like, I guess the tongue or something. And if you felt that you could get away with or could utilize or benefit from it being in the other ones, feel free to do so. So now that I have black on my brush, I'm going to go ahead and put the markings of the face. So the markings of the face, I'm going to, in essence, kind of outline the beak with black paint, something like this. And then these birds have black feathers on their neck. So I'm going to just kind of color the neck region with some little black feathers. And then where their eye is kind of directly behind their beak. And that's where this black kind of mask of sorts resides, is right behind the beak like that. And then you can even pull this black a little bit further along the head. We'll put an eyeball on there in a minute, but this is how I'm going to be starting it. And then maybe this black on the neck can come a little bit further in. So it can, in essence, kind of encapsulates like the little cheek on the side of the face with this. There we go. So this one over here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to outline my beak just to kind of get me started. Then I'm going to give myself some little bit of black feathers on that neck area. So something like this. And I'm just using a little wispy kind of brush stroke, and then I'm going to put where I feel the eye would go, I'm going to put that mask type of black area. The eye will sit within that mask area. So you can do something like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and move over to this guy in through here. So I'm still just going to kind of outline that beak. And again, if you can still see some red showing through, that's totally fine. I'm going to outline this bottom part because the neck feathers are going to reside behind this front portion of the beak. So I'm just going to color this all in with a little sketcherly brush stroke to get those neck feathers in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the mask part. So the mask part is going to go somewhere in here where those eyes are going to reside within the mask. So something like that. And then we'll put another one over on this side. Oh, he's going to be a cute one. Something like that. And then I'll go ahead and do these other two little guys. So just going to outline that mask, or the beak in through here. Put on some little neck feathers so we can get that little bit of blackness in through there, and then give myself the area where the eye is going to reside, and then just pull that out a little bit. So something like that works. We've got just making sure those little feathers work for me. Yep, that works. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this little guy in through here. So, and you might find that you need a smaller brush, or you need a bigger brush. Whatever works for you is totally fine. But you can see I'm approaching each one the same way, putting the outline in the beak, putting the neck feathers on, putting an area where the eye is going to reside, and then just pulling that out a little bit. And the more the feathers are ruffled, the more natural it's going to look. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put the eyes on. So wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put white paint on my brush, and I'm just going to have some fun expressive eyes. So these are not going to be exactly how cardinal eyes go in real life. These are how they go in my cartoon world. So I'm going to just put a circle for my eye like that, just white paint, and I'm going to do that for all of them to start. So we've got this circle for the white part, and I'm putting it right in the middle of that mask area that we had. So something like this, just a little white circle to start. And I'm not using a ton of paint, but I am making sure that I've got a good coverage. And if you run into wet black, you can certainly just wait a minute for it to dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this little guy in through here. And I have a very shaky hand, so what I tend to do, which is what I'm doing right now, is I rest my hand on my canvas to help with that, but it doesn't always work. So if you see my brush shaking, that's what's happening. But a lot of times what I can help, I can get it to stop by just resting my hand on my canvas. So that's a little trick of mine. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one. So now that I've got those on there, I got to put their pupils or whatever I want to tell where they're looking or what their expression is. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to use black paint to tell my eye expression story. So I've got black paint on my brush here. I want this one to look like his eyes are closed. So I'm just going to put a little curved slit within that white paint. So that's going to make him look like his eyes are closed. This little guy here, I want him to kind of look like he's just singing up to the sky. So I'm going to put his pupil up towards the top right of that circle, so somewhere in through there. This guy over here, I want him to look like he's looking down at his booklet, and he's really making sure he gets his words right. So I'm going to put the pupil looking down or down in that direction. So I've got my eyes googly and fun. You could have yours really however you want. This guy over here, I think I'm going to have him looking at his book too at a weird angle. So he's going to have his pupil of his eye is going to be down towards this area in through here. And then this guy over here, I'm going to have him looking at the tree. So I'm going to have his pupil over towards that right hand side. And then you can make any little tweaks you want. If you want your yellows to be brighter on your beaks, you can do another layer. I think I'm going to add another layer on this beak here. So I just washed and dried my brush. I'm putting back another layer of that yellow and white just on the teeny tip of this nose right in through here, so of this beak, so it looks a little bit brighter on there. There we go. And then make any little modifications you want. We're going to be, I said we were going to do the feet too. So while you have this yellow and white on your brush, all we're going to do is make a little highlight on them. So yellow and white is still on my brush, and I just kind of go right back over those feet and legs with a little streak of this yellow and white. See, I had it on my brush for a reason. It was there to remind me to do these. So I'm just using that yellow and white combination, giving myself a little highlight on my feet like this. Oh yeah, see, these are looking cute. Every time you do one little more detail, it's like, yep, that's bringing it where I want it. So all these little details make my painterly eye happy. I hope they make your painterly eye happy too. And then once we've got this done, we are going to be using the same small brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing our birds. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using red, black, white, and brown. I don't think I'm going to use any yellow. So what I'm in essence going to be doing is I'm doing any shadows that I want on the birds, any highlights that I want on the birds, and any shadows on the ground, and any little final details that I feel are necessary. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do my shadows. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of brown and black paint on my brush at the same time. And I'm going to put shadows on the ground underneath them. My light source is the tree, so all of my shadows should be going in the opposite direction. So if I'm going to do this little guy in through here, I have black and brown on my brush, and I'm going to put a little bit underneath those feet, and then I'm just going to pull out, rub a little shadow onto the snow on top of it. You could even use a little bit of water on your brush if that helps out. Depending on how aggressive you want your shadows to look, it's totally up to you. Just reloaded my brush with a little bit of black and brown, and I'm going to get this little guy to have a little bit of a shadow in through here. and maybe we'll have a little shadow coming in this direction. Maybe he's got his book of sorts is gonna, or his body's gonna put a little bit of a shadow on the ground coming in this direction. And again, I'm watching where my light source is, which is the tree. And if anything goes wrong, you can always just pick up some of your ground color and put, you know, cover up a shadow if it didn't go right. I'm gonna go ahead and do these little feet shadows or leg shadows. So this one again, just kind of putting a little bit of darkness underneath the feet. My highlight or my light source is there, so these are going to come off at a little bit of an angle. So something like this. And again, a little bit of water on your brush can certainly help to just pull them out. And shadows can be skewed. They don't have to be exactly a beautiful, you know, mirror image, especially since they're in snow. So these don't have to be anything other than a little bit of a darkness going in the right direction, the correct direction. So just pulling this out a little bit. This is going to come somewhere in this direction. And of course, we're going to be doing some final details to the snow as well. So if anything goes wrong, we'll be able to disguise it in a minute. And then this one I'm going to have going out to that right hand side. So a little bit of black and brown on my brush, just putting some little shadows underneath there, and then just kind of pulling this out towards the right hand side, making it kind of blend in a little bit with that snow, something like that. And again, we've got snow on top coming in a minute. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my shadows on my bird. So I'm going to be using red with a tiny bit of black paint on my brush. And I'm going to put shadows on the opposing side of the body. So if the light source is over there, I'll put a little bit of a shadow maybe underneath the tail, maybe on the back side of the bird, maybe a little bit on this back side of the head, something like that. And I'll do the same thing over here. That tail is over on that side. We've got maybe a little bit of shadow on this side of the body like this. And this whole side might have a little bit of shadow just because of the way that it's placed. Again, just reloading my brush with a, oops, I think I just picked up some white. I don't want white when I'm doing my shadow, so I just had to wash my brush. A little bit of black and red is what I'm going to do for my shadow colors. Making sure I have enough black on here. This one I'm going to put a little bit of shadow underneath. Maybe he's got a little bit on this back side of him. And again, I'm just really using these light, sketcherly type of brush strokes. I'm not going for any fine-tuned detail here. I just like to have a little bit of dimension in my painting. So this is where I like to add these highlights and shadows to give it a little bit of a dimensional element. So it looks a little bit, you know, 3D-ish. So again, just reloading my brush with a little bit of black and brown, black and red. I'm going to put some shadow underneath this guy. This guy, in essence, could almost all be in the shadow because he's in front of the tree, but I don't want to go too dark on him, so I'm just going to put, you know, a little bit more darkness down here, maybe make him a little bit darker than the others, but maybe not too much, and then just kind of pick up that red. Make sure that this chest has enough redness. I'll put a little highlight on the wing hands in a minute, but right now just kind of getting this layer of my red on, and then go into the other guy with a little bit of red and black on my brush. This one's going to get it over here on the right hand side because my light source is to the left of him. So something like this. It's funny because sometimes I don't know whether or not I'm talking about a male or a female bird or animal when I'm doing animals. But the red cardinal I definitely know is a male. So I'm safe when I'm calling this guy a male because there are no red female cardinals. Well, the females can have a little redden, but definitely nothing like the males do. So that's going to give me my shadow in through there. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put my highlights on. So washing and drying my brush, and my highlights are going to be red and white. So I'm going to start with a little bit of red on my brush just to make sure that I have a full coat of red going on wherever I want it to, and then I'm going to pick up a little bit of red and white on my brush at the same time to give myself the little highlights on, like the hands, the bird hands, the wing hands. I don't know what we want to call them. So the little hands that are holding on to the the caroling book. So I'm just adding a little bit of red and white wherever I want there to be a little bit of a highlight or some feathers popping out. Start with, again, on each bird with a little bit of red on my brush just to make sure everywhere is painting it in the way that I want it to. And then once I'm sure of that, then I can pick up a little bit of white paint and just add my bits of highlights, telling the story of where that light is coming from and just illuminating anything that I want to be illuminated. So that'll definitely be the hands, or whatever we want to call them, and any other part that's close to the light source or leaning towards the light source. So again, I've just got red on my brush. I'm coloring it in to make sure that I didn't miss any spots with my red paint. And then once I've got that on there, I'm going to pick up a little bit of red and white. This one can have some highlight on this crown over on the side where the tree is. We've got a little highlight on his wing hand of sorts. And this is where you can, make sure that you have a good coverage. Maybe we've got a couple little streaks in this tail, something like that. Yeah, he's looking cute. Something like this. And then of course any little additional pieces of feathers that you want to show as well. Going to move right on to the next one with just a little bit of red paint on my brush. This one's going to get a little bit more interesting of a highlight because he's got the tree behind him. So he's going to get some highlights along the edges of his body, especially on that head area, which I feel is closest to the tree. So I've got that, and I'm putting a little bit of white on my brush just to get those hands to show up, and then I'll put some along the edge. Let's see if I can keep my hand out of the way here. Put a little bit on the edge in through here, and maybe in between those little pieces of his crown, just so we can see that that light is shining through from the other side. And of course you can adjust that as much as you want. He's definitely got a nice crown going on. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And I'm going to reload my brush with just red paint to finish up this little guy over here. He's looking pretty excited that he's singing his song. And then once I've got that red paint on there, making sure that I didn't miss anywhere, now I'm just going to put a little bit of red and white on my brush, and this will give me my little highlights on my wing hands. It's making me laugh every time I say wing hands, not quite sure why. But we've got maybe a little bit of lighter feathers on this side, something like that, and maybe a little bit on the top of his head, something like that. And then we're going to be utilizing our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your birds all nice and done, you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to put snow on our canvas. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to use white paint. So I'm going to put snow on my tree first, and then I'm going to put it everywhere else as well. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with some white paint on my brush, and because I'm doing my tree, I want to have a little bit of control with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of wipe it off on the side of my palette so my bristles kind of come together, and this way I can be more in control as to where I want this snow to be laid. You can certainly have yours in different kind of clumps and in different kind of ways, but I'm trying to make it so I don't cover up the whole tree with the snow. But that's going to be a preference on your part, depending on how much snowfall you want to have accumulated on your tree. But because we have lights and all that good stuff, I really wanted to preserve some of that. When you get to this little guy here, you can just kind of go right up to it, and if for some reason you do something that you don't like, you can always just paint the bird back on top of it if you accidentally bump into it or something. But I'm just going to kind of pretend like he's not there. If I bump into him, then I'll fix it later. So I'm just going to kind of do this in this kind of in a downward type of motion, but it doesn't have to be that way. Just to me, when snow kind of piles up on pine trees, sometimes it appears to me like it's almost like leaning over or at a little bit of an angle. So feel free to make that however you want it to be, and definitely put a little snow on the top, because to me that's where the snow sits first. So I like to make sure that I have some snow up in that vicinity. And then once you've got that done, now I'm gonna let it snow everywhere else and try and make it so it doesn't look too consistent. So if it looks organized, just kind of mess it up a little bit. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reload my brush with white paint. I'm gonna do a lot of snow at the top and around the edges, almost like a border to my canvas. And then I'll get it to be lighter or less snow on the inside. So I'm just gonna take the a lot of white that I have on my brush and kind of dot it around the edges like this, and then I'll go all the way down along the bottom edge as well. So I'm going to just move my canvas just a little bit here. So I've got this along the bottom edge and kind of creeping up these corners and through here. So this way, when I put the snow everywhere, sometimes I like to do these borders to it. Almost reminds me of like a holiday card that you would receive, you know, a vintage kind of card that I don't think a lot of people send Christmas cards anymore. I think some people do, but not nearly as much as they did when I was a kid. I remember my mom used to have hundreds of them all over the mantle fireplace from people who had sent them throughout the holiday season, and they were really cool. They had so much cool artwork on them. So I guess that's where I get inspired by some of these winter scenes. So once I've got that edge done, now what I'm going to do, I'm just kind of letting myself run out of paint. If I feel like I want any more in the ground, I can certainly just take my brush with just very little remnants on it and just kind of wiggle it around to give it that soft, fluffy look on the ground. And then what I'll do is in the sky, I'm just going to let myself kind of run out of paint and just kind of keep dotting it. If you feel like you really have no more paint on your brush, like I feel like I have no more paint on my brush, then certainly go ahead and reload it. But if you can let yourself kind of run out of paint throughout as you're going towards the center of that canvas, that's what's going to make it look like it's more airy and you'll have those 1,000 little soft pieces of snow that are just kind of drifting down from the sky. And you can certainly make yours a blizzard. You can have it way heavier snow than mine is. It's totally, the visual preference is going to be all however you want to see it. You could even kind of rub it into the canvas if you wanted to. So just make it as bright and beautiful as you want, or as airy as you want. Keep fiddling with it as much as you want, and then when you feel like you've got it just as perfect as you want it to be, we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your snow on here, you can put your large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going with my small brush. I am signing with white paint today. I'm going bottom left. I sign with my initials, but you could certainly sign with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you want for your identifying mark to be is totally fine. It's your painting. You get to sign it however you'd like to. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a fun musical winter image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.